All right, are we ready? Okay. Are you guys all happy with Leviticus 11, abomination, Messiah, and tell us we can eat whatever we want realities? Okay. No one's got any questions or other epiphanies or anything? Hopefully we put it into as simplest terms as possible and carry that over. And so if you guys are then good, we're going to move on to Leviticus 12, 13. You can mark down 12, 13, 14. It's all going to be dealing with sa'arat, what we would call leprosy, okay, in some of your translations. And chapter 15 is going to do with purification, offering, and then Leviticus 16 is going to basically be Yom Kippur. All right? So these next couple of chapters are going to seem a little bit definitely not part of your normal study. All right? In the sense of we read through this very much like the offerings, and then we go, well, how do we apply this reality? Okay? So it's very particular to what the priests have to do when inspecting things. I want you to pay careful attention because it follows a similar pattern, all right, to see what happens when we identify that there is an infection, what the priest is supposed to look for, and from then what type of offering must take place. And remember, we're thinking Hebraically. So we're thinking pictures, right? So if I say there's hyssop, there's wood, there's water, there is blood. Immediately we should be saying, hang on a second, that sounds very similar. Right? And you're going to parallel a lot of these things with what the cross promised to deliver us from. Okay? Remember, we focus a lot on Yeshua's death or the crucifixion dealing with sin. All right? Just for the sake of we terrorizing you. Like that's something new. What else? When Yeshua died, he took away our sin, is the main, right? Yes? Yes. Okay. What else did he do? Well, all right, so he conquered the dead. Okay. Fixed relationship. Redemption. Okay, now I'm talking about in the death. What does the death kind of bring into culmination? Yeah, well, prophecy fulfillment. We see that. Justification. And what you're going to add to that list, what you're going to focus on is purification. Right? He's also not only our Yom Kippur offering, our atonement, but he's also the Passover lamb. Well, that's the whole, the promise of if I deal with your sin, if I deal with death, if I deal with sickness, if I deal with disease, and I recreate everything. Adam was created to be with God forever and ever, correct? So he's basically restoring everything that we broke. Okay, so all of these are things that kind of go, I'm overcoming these things so that you could have this. Okay, so remember when we're dealing with purification because of death and uncleanliness, let me just write there unclean, as we went through some of these topics of what is unclean to God, then it's kind of a process of, all right, through this offering, the future implications of, like we saw in Ezekiel 36, I'm going to sprinkle you clean, I'm going to deal with your uncleanness. It's part of that covenant relationship we have. Okay? But for us to first kind of get that in our head, we kind of have to, again, go back and put on our hats and go, right, if this is what renders me unclean, remember it's both something that is in a state and it has to do a lot with worship and so on. But it also brings in the parallel of, hang on a second, has the fall and sin got to do with this? And this is what we're going to kind of dig into. All right? Every time you think of the crucifixion, I want you to see Father I mean, this isn't exhaustive, right? This is just a few little ones that I want you to just process on. Is that there is a bigger picture at play than just dealing with your sin. Okay? This was part of the work to get you home. All right? And these are some of the hurdles that he overcame. And this is why when Yeshua goes out and he heals the lepers, it's part of the fulfillment or the foreshadow of, listen, I have the authority to you, just like he forgave sin. Following? All right, chapter 12. It says, Adonai said to Moses, tell the people of Israel, if a woman conceives and gives birth to a boy, she will be unclean for 7 days, with the same uncleanliness as in her time of her cycle, her nidah. When she is having her menstrual cycle, on the 8th day, the baby's foreskin is to be circumcised. Why? Okay, so it's establishing a covenantal promise which was first given to whom? Abraham. Is it a Jewish reality? Okay, so who in Abraham's house? Do we have some sort of indication that it wasn't just for Abraham and his seed? Anybody bought into his household, anybody belonging to his household. All right? If you're looking at Genesis 17. All right? He establishes this covenant on the 8th day. So if we look at it again, we're just following in pictures for a little bit. We go, okay, 7 days you're unclean. Now remember, this pertains to boys. She is unclean for 7 days. All right? Then on the 8th day, is Brit Milah, or is, we're going to put you in dedication. Dedication into covenant. All right? A Brit, okay, is to cut. All right? So you're establishing the covenant, just like the stone was cut. The animals were split. All right? It becomes part of this, where the covenant is sealed into your flesh, because I want to make a promise to you and your sons who are going to carry on this promise, this covenantal line from Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov. It wasn't that the women weren't part of that covenant, they were chosen to carry that seed. But for you as the men of the household, you have a specific position that I want to do this through you. Right? And in 7 days for us is generally a number of perfection, but it's also a number of what? Creation. Okay? So you've gone through a very arduous labor. You've gone through giving birth. And immediately in your mind you should go, well, what happened to Eve? What was part of the curse for Eve? You will redeem yourself through labor. This childbearing, this part of that reality. It was good, now it's fallen, and now you carry this reality into your state. Follow. This is something that God has to fix. But there's a cycle to it. So in this creation, he comes up with the 8th day. 8's generally about recreation or new creation. All right? On the 8th day, the baby's foreskin is to be circumcised. She is to wait an additional 33 days to be purified from her blood. Well, that's an interesting scenario if we understand that Yeshua was probably crucified at the age of 53. She is not to touch any holy thing or come into the sanctuary until the time of her purification is over. This is a time you are separated from God in a sense. You can't go up to the tabernacle. You can't walk into the temple. Right? He's teaching you a reality between holiness, clean, and unclean. That's just a state you're in for a time. He wants to help you, or he's going to overcome it so that you can never be separated from it. Okay? But if she gives birth to a girl, she will be unclean for 2 weeks as in her nidah, and she is to wait another 66 days to be purified from her blood. All right? Hang on a second. 33 days. And here, for girls, we basically double everything. I'm still. Why? Girls are problematic. Why? Why do you think that is? Yeah, I probably think it has more to do. Remember, he's dealing with the cycle. He's dealing with labor. He's dealing with birth. Now, this isn't a case where he's going, oh, now all of a sudden girls are less than. But boys needed to be covenanted too because they need to lead. What did Adam not do in the garden? Yeah, he just kind of sat back and let her do it. Oh, yes, it's a very good argument. I will have some fruit. Do you want some as well? Right? Men, it's easier for you to become passive if you have women who are capable. Why? Yeah. Easier and it's the other man, listen, yeah, shift of responsibility, but I mean you also got this contention between the two. Why is there contention? Why is she taking the lead? Yeah. The contention happens because of part of the fall. Remember, when God kind of puts things back into place, he puts them back into order. How many of us struggle with that natural order of things? And I don't want you to just think man and woman here. I want you to think surrender to submission to Yeshua first. How many of you will have an instruction or God will tell you to do something, and whether you're a man or a woman, you will still contend against it? The flesh will kick up against it until you fully surrender to the fact that actually he knows best, I don't. He loves me more than I love myself. He is ultimately my God, my Lord, that makes me not. So my job is to follow and to trust him in that position. Right? That happens for all mankind. From there, he puts things in order. You go, listen, I created Adam first. He's supposed to understand that relationship a little bit better, and you're supposed to come in underneath. It doesn't mean that you are any less. It's just the order of creation. And now all of a sudden you have the fall in the midst of it, and you have an uncleanly cycle, and you have all of this that is trying to fix in because of something we broke. When we come into a place of surrender and understanding, we can come into a place of submission. But when I still think I know better, and I refuse to trust, because isn't that ultimately what we do to God when we tell him, oh, but go and do this? No, no, no. Ladies, when your husband says, I think we should do it this way, and you bully him into do it your way, you're telling him it's no good. In the same way, we tell God it's no good. But if we're not, as men, focused on the reality of, I need to be surrendered to God so that you can trust me because this is what God has told me. Following? Okay? It is a challenge because it's out of order. It's out of alignment. Just like an unclean cycle is not the way it was supposed to be. Okay? So, this seems to get doubled because Eve was out of line. That's the best understanding I probably give you. There might be 50 million more reasons, and we're going to ask God one day why he did it that way. But it looks like it's compounded because of Eve. And the men at 8 days, or the boys at 8 days, will be dedicated into covenant because they have this responsibility. Why am I different, mommy? The covenant has been established in you. God chose you long before you chose yourself, or you chose him. right? If you don't get that as part of your identity growing up, I mean, many of us did, right? You know, I want you to understand that you're loved. I want you to understand that you're accepted, but I want you to understand, generally we use those dynamics in a worldly way. What do you want for your kids? How many of us are taking into that reality of, listen, God gave you this son because you belong to him. And I guarantee you, going through a Britney now with your children, if you have a little boy at 8 days old, it can be a very challenging reality. Because the last thing you want to do is let that baby feel pain. And God says, you trust me enough with that moment. Seemingly insignificant, your children will not remember it at 8 days. But the parents. Okay? All right, let's bring it back. Verse 6. When the days of her purification are over, whether for a son or for a daughter, she is to bring a lamb in her first year for a burnt offering. Burnt offering tells you complete dedication, right? And a young pigeon or a dove for a sin offering, okay? To the entrance of the tent of meeting, to the kohen, he will offer it before Adonai and make atonement for her. Thus she will be purified from her discharge of blood. Such is the law for a woman who gives birth, whether to a boy or to a girl. Right? You need to be completely dedicated and you need purification. If she can't afford a lamb, she is to take 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, and one for a burnt offering and one for a sin offering, and the kohen will make atonement for her, and she will be clean. It will be done. You will not be separate, even for a time. Because of our sin, we are in this perpetuated cycle of brokenness that separates me from God. This is something God promises to do. Does that make sense? Right? Yes. The Brit Milah would have probably happened on the 8th day. Yes. 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 That had to be accessible after the time of the purification. Right? So this was a normal reality for every first century Bible believer. Right? Yeah. All right, chapter 13. Adonai said to Moses and Aaron, if someone develops a skin or swelling, a scab or a bright spot, which could develop into the disease Sa'arat. All right, now, most translations say leprosy. Remember, this is slightly different to what we call, I think they call it Henningsen's disease today. The doctors have taken a look at this, and apparently we find discrepancies in modern day, or this leprosy, this Henningsen's disease, and the way it manifests itself versus what Sa'arat does. Okay? Where was the first indication where someone got Sa'arat? Miriam, right? Remember when Miriam went up against Moses, or even when he pulled out his hand, right? He gave him leprosy, but someone besides a sign. When Miriam went up against Moses, and Miriam and Aaron went up against Moses and they had an argument with him, Miriam got hit with Sa'arat and she got healed at the same time, and she was put outside the camp for 7 days. Okay? So it seems to be associated with coming up against authority, coming up against God. All right? So there is something that attaches the idea that Sa'arat is a sin problem, not just a fallen nature problem. He is to be brought to Aaron, to the kohen, or to one of his sons who are kohanim. The kohen is to examine the sore on his skin. If the hair in the sore has turned white and the sore appears to go deep into the skin, it is ta'arat. And after examining him, the kohen is to declare him unclean. So follow the pattern. I have something, I go to the priest. Why don't I go to the doctor? Okay, part of clean and unclean, but also the priest is not there just to teach me the difference between clean and unclean. It also he's there to help me deal with myself. Right? So what is the priest supposed to do? Okay, and how does he figure that out? What's the description? I want to show you something. Okay. He's got to like sit there and examine it. And he's not just looking at the outward sign, he's looking at whether there's something wrong in the root. If the hair changes color, that tells you there's something wrong inside. I want you to apply this to a sin reality. Sometimes, this is not all the time, but sometimes someone is going to be dealing with something, and when they come to someone and they go, listen, I'm really struggling with this, would you pray for me? And then we stop and we go, what's the cause? If I were to ask you, what's the root? Why do you seem to want to run into the sin cycle the whole time? What is it that you're not dealing with? This is what I think Abba is trying to get them to understand. It's the heart condition. It's the thought process. It's something that is internal that is starting to manifest externally. Have you ever met someone who's dealing with or who had some sort of ailment and you just knew it was because of something they were doing when no one else was around? It's not always the case, guys. Sometimes you just get sick because of the fallen nature of man. Your body is not what it should be. But when it comes down to tzaharat, he's making a clear distinction. He's going, listen, this isn't just an unclean thing that separates you from God, but there's something deeper. Okay? He says, if the bright spot is on his skin is white, it does not appear to go deep into the skin and its hair has not turned white, then the kohen is to isolate him for 7 days. 7-day cycle again. Let's see what happens. On the 7th day, the kohen is to examine him again. And if the sore appears the same as before and has not spread onto the skin, then the kohen is to isolate him for 7 more days. On the 7th day, the kohen is to examine him again. And if the sore has faded and hasn't spread on the skin, then the kohen is to declare him clean. It is only a scab. So he is to wash his clothes and be clean. Why wash his clothes? You've got a funny face, you go over there, the examines you, it's still there 7 days outside the camp, then you come back after 7 days, it's still not cleared up, outside the camp, come back in, oh, you just need a wash. What is the washing going to do with it? So he's saying that all you needed was a bath? Not just purification, because you have a purification after. But remember when at Sinai God told him, don't go near a woman and do what? Wash yourself. Why? Does God not want you to be, you've been walking a really long way, you always stink. He said, please wash yourself before you appear before the king. Is that what he's trying to tell you? Well, after the reality is that comes in, he said, listen, if you're focusing on the clean or the water on the outside, you should be focusing on what's going on inside. Right? He gives you an outward mitzvah or a physical mitzvah to teach you a spiritual thing. Okay? Are you busy focusing on when you're going in, you have been declared clean, and you go out and you wash yourself? Okay. Father's accepted me. All right. I'm okay. If you appear before God, wash yourself. Why? Because he wants you to check the examining of the heart. Who may ascend the hills of the Lord? He who has clean hands. It doesn't mean that he's really happy with soap and water, clean hands and appear. Right, because the association is that when I'm busy washing my hands, I'm actually looking at my heart condition. Okay, you guys follow? It's expression. Says, But if the scab spreads further onto the skin after he has been examined by the kohen and declared clean, he is to let himself be examined yet again by the kohen. The kohen will examine him, and if he sees that the scab has spread on his skin, then the kohen will declare him unclean. It's sa'arat. What if he touches something unclean? Right? If a person has sa'arat, he is to be brought to the kohen. The kohen is to examine him. And if he sees that there is a white swelling in the skin which has turned the hair white and inflamed the flesh in the swelling, swelling tells you deeper infection, then it is chronic sa'arat on his skin, and the kohen is to declare him unclean. He is to isolate him because it is already clear that he is unclean. If the sa'arat breaks out all over the skin so that as far as the kohen can see, the person with sa'arat has sores everywhere on his body, from his head to his feet, then the kohen is to examine him, and if he sees that the sa'arat has covered his entire body, he is to pronounce the person with the sores clean. Yeah, gotta read that quickly. All right. It has all turned white, he is clean. So if it starts to scab and be healed, it's fine. If it's reddish and it's changing hair color and there's swelling, infection. Okay, now practically we can go, listen, if there's a guy out there and he breaks out in all sores and we're all staying in tents next to each other, is it the best thing for everybody that he stays in camp? No. So God will protect us physically, but there is a spiritual connotation to this. Verse 14. But if one day inflamed flesh appears on him, he will be unclean. The kohen will examine the inflamed flesh and declare him unclean. The inflamed flesh is unclean, it is ta'arat. However, if the inflamed flesh again turns white, he is to come to the kohen. The kohen will examine him, and if he sees that the sores have turned white, then the kohen is to declare clean the person with the sores that he is clean. If a person has on his skin a boil that heals in such a way that the place of the boil, there is this white swelling or reddish, white bright spot, it is to be shown to the kohen. The kohen is to examine it. If he sees that it appears to be more than skin deep and its hairs turn white, then the kohen is to pronounce him unclean. The disease of sa'arat is broken out in the boil. But if the kohen looks at it and doesn't see any white hairs in it, and it isn't more than skin deep but appears faded, the kohen is to isolate him for 7 days. If it spreads onto the skin, the kohen will declare him unclean. It is the disease. But if the bright spot stays there, where it was, and has not spread, it is the scar of the boil. The kohen is to declare him clean. All right, another thing to just kind of bring into context that sometimes other people would want to examine and then they come up with an idea of what you have. It's not always great. You've got to go to a place where they've been trained to be able to tell you exactly what this is so that they can help you deal with whatever you're dealing with. It doesn't really bring that description across. If you touch it, you're gonna get it. But it kind of gives an indication, and you'll see in later chapters where it says, I actually have to give a warning that you have to stay away from it. Okay, so I think it is more of a spiritual connotation in this context. All right, but I can't say yay or nay. Outside the camp. That means where you were living, you're not no longer living. Remember, in a case of something like the Purnai, you have 2,000 residents in there. You have to go to a separated section outside. Right? If you have family and they want to bring you food, they can bring it up to a point and they can drop it there and then they can leave. He doesn't call it contagious, he calls it unclean. So I don't want to put words in and we go, oh, well, this is just practically about dealing with a contagious disease. It might be. But I think the implication of what he's trying to bring across is that you're in a fallen state because of something that is underlying. A reason, well, what do you you've got two realities here, okay? Is number one, you're not going to be bouncing up and down going to temple. But two, you're also being isolated from people. So if I'm sitting there for 7 days, what is the question I'm asking? Right? I mean, yeah, you've got no choice, no distraction, no people, no hiding it. Right? Everybody knows you're outside the camp. This is a community reality. Why are you outside the camp? 7 days you're sitting over there. The priest is going to come back and examine you. What did he say? Now, I don't want to point fingers and go, yes, it's definite sin all the time. You know, we have that reality with Job. But there is a point where you are having serious conversations and asking God, going, what is going on? And I don't know, I've heard a few people that when they get struck with something, and all they can do is kind of just sit around and have conversations with God because they can't put their back, or they can't do this, or they can't do that. It's in those moments where God taught them something. In the case of, yeah, you've been so busy and you've been running in the opposite direction for a really long time. I decided to slow you down to get your attention. Yeah, let's talk. Let me take away the thing that you kind of take for granted. Your life. Think about your routine for a second. If Yom Kippur doesn't just teach you about sin, when you fast, it teaches you that you're a creature of habit. Right? For many of us that have tried it, and you do a complete dry fast, how many times do you walk past the kettle and want to turn it on for no apparent reason? You walk past the fridge, you open it up to see what's in there, but you're not eating. Like, why are you even doing it? All of a sudden, you're looking at your watch and it's like, oh, it's 12 o'clock. It's lunchtime, but you're not eating. You run your entire day according to certain cycles without you even realizing. Okay? So if I take that reality away from you, what are you left with? Now, what happens if I take away your distractions? That could be people, that could be your work, that could be, and I put you in a little quiet spot, and it's you and God and a whole bunch of, I hope I'm okay. Now we're probably going to get to the real meat of the matter. Father, if there's anything that I've done, if there's anything inside of me, Father, if there's anything that I've just kind of let just hold up and hold up and hold up and hold up, and now all of a sudden it's popping out. Father, show me. Help me deal with it. Help me get to the root of the problem. Help me deal with my unforgiveness, my trauma, my anger, my frustration, my ... my insecurity. And when I get to the point of that, then I can kind of go, you know what, if God didn't interrupt my life at this moment, I just could have carried on perpetuating the same cycle of broken. You know, this just isn't a fallen state thing. This is God investing himself in your life to teach you something about yourself that he can fix. Just fast forward. Yeshua walking around. There's a person over there. You'll hear in the chapters coming up that when you see them coming, you're supposed to cover your lip and you're supposed to scream, unclean, unclean, unclean. As in, get back. And some of them stop screaming unclean and they start singing Son of David. Well, I fully comprehend the fact that something unclean touches something clean, I can render that person unclean. But like we said in our unclean discussion, something fully holy, if something touches that, it is made holy. And Yeshua looks at them without flinching and he goes, I'm willing. And he reaches into your mess, restores you, sends you back to the priest for a testimony. It's like, I've watched you, I examined you, I saw you. And now, how did you get healed? With God. There is moments or there's things that you carry, that you get to the place where sometimes God will allow a physical manifestation to pop up because you were to deal with the actual heart condition reality. Here's the problem, guys. If you refuse to deal with your internal ta'arat, well, let me say it this way. Don't think that your internal problems is not affecting the problem of the community anymore. It doesn't have to become an external reality before you deal with it. You follow? We have to look deeper. We have to ask why. And we have to run to God so that He can help us deal with it. I'm hoping that's what you're hearing when you go into this now. Okay? What am I? Verse 24. Or if someone has a skin of burn caused by fire, and the inflamed flesh where it was burned has become a bright spot, reddish white or white, the coffin is to examine it, and he sees that the hair in the bright spot has turned white, and it appears to be deeper than the skin around it. It's sarat. It was broken out in the burn, and the coffin is to declare him unclean. It is a sore from sarat. But if the coffin examines it and sees no white hair and on the bright spot, and it has no more than skin deep but looks faded, then the coffin is to isolate him for 7 days. On the 7th day, the coffin is to examine him. If it is spread on the skin, then the coffin is to declare him unclean. It is a sore from sarat. But if the bright spot stays where it was and has not spread onto the skin but appears faded, it is a swelling due to a burn, then the coffin is to declare him clean, because it is only a scar from the burn. If a man or woman has a sore on her head and a man in his beard, then the coffin is to examine the sore. If he sees that it appears deeper than the skin around it, with yellow thin hair in it, the coffin is to declare him unclean. It is a crusted area, sa'arat, of the head or beard. If the coffin examines the diseased crusted area and sees that it appears not to be deeper than the skin around it, and without any black hair in it, when the coffin is to isolate for 7 days the person with the diseased crusted area. On the 7th day, the coffin is to examine the sore, and if he sees the crusted area hasn't spread, that it has no yellow hair in it, and that the crusted area is not deeper than the skin around it, then the person is to be shaved, except for the crusted area itself, and the coffin is to isolate him for 7 more days. On the 7th day, the coffin is to examine the crusted area, and if he sees that the crusted area has not spread the skin and goes spread on the skin, and does not appear to be deeper than the skin around it, then the coffin is to declare him clean. He is to wash his clothes and be clean. But if the crusted area spreads after his purification, then the coffin is to examine him, and if he sees that the crusted area has spread on the skin, the coffin is not to look for the yellow hair, he is unclean. But if the crusted area's appearance doesn't change and black hair grows up in it, then the crusted area is healed, he is clean, and the coffin is to declare him clean. If a man or woman has bright spots on their skin, bright white spots, then the coffin is to examine them. He is to see that the bright spots on the skin are dull white. If it is only a rash that has broken up from the skin, he is clean. If a man's hair has fallen from his scalp, he is bald, but he is clean. That's good news for some of us. It has hair that is fallen from the front part of his head. He is forehead bald, but he is clean. But if one of a bald scalp or forehead, there is a reddish white sore, it's ta'arat breaking out on the bald scalp or forehead. Then the coffin is to examine him. If he sees that there is a reddish white swelling on the bald scalp or the forehead, appearing like ta'arat, on the rest of his body, he is a person with sarat. He is unclean. The coffin must declare him unclean. The sore is on his head. All right, just another simple note. Sometimes we will look at something and then we might get freaked out. If you see someone with some strange bump, can you imagine having these laws? and then looking at someone, and then there's all of a sudden some inflamed patch or some hair falling out, how quickly could we turn that into pain? All I have to run around screaming that this person has got something wrong with them, and everybody's going to want nothing to do. But if he's declared clean, he's been examined, he's okay, he's allowed to stay. We're just going home. Leave us alone. Verse 45. Everyone who has sa'arat sores is to wear torn clothes and unbound hair. Torn clothes, what? State of mourning, unbound hair, you're unkept. Cover his lip, his upper lip and cry, unclean, unclean. Now, this disease has now become part of who you are. I want you to think about that lady with the hemorrhage for 12 years. The difficulty, she must have struggled. She spent all her money trying to get healing. And in a moment of reaching out and touching, as it said, everything was restored. Okay? This unclean story in God's eyes is a very big thing. As long as he has sores, he will be unclean. Since he is unclean, he must live in isolation. He must live outside the camp. When sa'arat infects an article of clothing, right? So if we get something that jumps onto our clothes, whether it be woolen or a linen garment on the threads or the woven parts of either linen or wool, or on a hide or an item made of leather, then if the stain of the garment, hide, threads, woven in parts, or leather item is greenish or reddish, now we might just call that mold. Right? It is an infection of sa'arat, and it is to be shown to the kohen. The kohen is to examine the stain and isolate the article and has the infection for 7 days. On the 7th day, he is to examine the stain. If the stain has spread onto the garment threads, woven in parts or leather, whatever its use, the infection is contagious sa'arat, the garment is unclean. He is to burn the garment threads, woven in parts, either wool or linen, an item of leather having the infection, for it is a contagious sa'arat. It must be burned up completely. But if, when the kohen examines it and sees that the infection has not spread on the garment, or in the threads, woven in the parts, or the leather item, then the kohen is to order that the article having the infection be washed and isolated for 7 more days. The kohen is to examine it after the stain has been washed, and if he sees that the stain has not changed color, then even though the stain has not spread, it is unclean. Yet you are to burn it up completely. It is rotten, no matter whether the spot is on the outside or on the inside. If the kohen examines it and sees that the stain has faded after being washed, then he is to tear the stain out the garment, leather threads or woven parts. If it appears again in the garment threads, woven in parts, or the leather item, it is contagious, and you are to burn it up completely the article that had the stain. But if the infection is gone from the garment threads, woven in parts, or leather item that you washed, then it is to be washed a second time, and it will be clean. This is the law concerning infections of sa'arat in garment, of wool, or linen, or on the threads, or the woven parts, or in any leather item. Then is to declare when it is to declare it clean and when to declare it unclean. All right. Any questions? Any thoughts? Yeah. Yes. 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 Exactly. What do you think when he said someone touched me? Yeah, and if the rabbi says it was fine and we witnessed the miracle, there's nothing we can say. Remember, he says, disciples looked at him and they said, there's people pushing in and around you all over the place, and you want to know who touched. You know, it's like, come on. She wasn't even supposed to be in the crown. Right? Yeah, that's again her faith, which is why he says your faith has healed you. When you go into that process of, if I just, and that's the thing, not if he just prays for me, if he just declares it. She reached out and she touched in Greek. Remember, it's an interesting word. It's called kraspedon. The hem of his garment is a translation. Kraspedon tells you it's a twisted cord. All right, his sit. Why reach out for the sit in that idea? I mean, surely if I just touch it, surely if I just touch it, surely if he just says it, healing in his wings, so that would be a recognizing who he is. But again, let's add on. Why else? Remember, what am I missing? Is it just about the healing, or is it the separation from God? Right. Remember what this represents. Right? You're set apart. She was reaching out not only just to be healed, but she was reaching out to God. Right? She had been separated for 12 years. No fellowship, no temple service, no one around. And she goes to a man who seems to be doing these miracles and wonders who prophecy seems to speak of. And she recognizes him and understands that there is healing in his wings. She understands that he can do this. She's reaching out to be restored to the Creator. And it's God who stops and goes, someone touch me. Yes. Probably lower. There's two ideas, and one of them is that obviously with like a talit type of thing, an outer cloak that the sit was attached on. Other people believe that the sit was on the bottom of their garment. So, by their ankles type of symbol. Yeah. Yes. 100%. There is a restoration process here, but before I can cry out for the restoration, I have to recognize the fallen state. For most of us, we get to the place where we go, I'm a sinner. But we don't get to the understanding that sin is a strong fence that separates me from my Creator. Not just the authority. My desperation to be with Him is the reality. I mean, if we just, again, if you look at that, death separates us from sickness, death, disease, right? There is something there that's impossible for me to come back to unless He destroys it, right? If I look at redemption, I have to acknowledge that I'm outside the camp. I'm stuck in a slavery. I'm in a place where I shouldn't be. And then God comes to fetch me, buys me out of my contract, and He says, come on home. I have to first recognize that I am not where I should be. Justification talks about me being on trial. I'm guilty. If I can't come to grips with my sinful, broken nature, I will have no desire to reach out to my salvation, Yeshua, to restore me to God. Follow? So unclean and unclean is very similar to this sin, in the sense of this is something that's not as it should be. Death is not as God installed it. So how do I fix it? First, I have to show you there's something wrong. You follow? Yeah.
You know what that reminds me of when it comes that we got the job is they cut it out that would use the muscle the skin. Because it's like a contaminating you can.
Right.
So they cut it out and contaminate part. fixing that. Yeah, but when it happens, things will be better. There is no significant.
To be a problem. Yeah, when you talk, when just to elaborate on what the Vicar said, he said when your eye causes you to sin, you know, pluck it out, and remember that's a corporate reality. Following? Yeah. Yeah, there's a point where if someone refuses to come right, you have to let them go because it's going to cause the whole body to fall. Okay? How do I know this? Because if you can lust with one eye, you can lust with the other one just fine.
So I will put a better one. If we need something to do now, then then what the water, I did my phone, we get at the problem, normally my head for them.
In a personal place. Yes. So yeah, now there is that application as well, but we still be about obviously the body. Right? But there are things in your life that you have to kind of get to grips to. And if you are struggling with something, as many of us do, we go through cycles, right? And then if I don't respond a certain way, if I can't get my thinking straight, if I can't do this, I can't do that, or whatever, I want to invite you this week to just kind of go to God and say, like, I want you to take a look at the root. I want you to see what the infection is under the skin. I want to figure out what is this thing that my body is trying to get rid of. Because I know it's not good. And if we can humble ourselves enough to actually take the answer, and again, you might get one, you might not. It might be part of a fallen nature, it might be something deeper. But if he wants you to let it go so that you can be here, take this opportunity. Okay? All right. Next week, try and do 14 and 15. 14, I'm going to summarize because it's very much the same pattern. But it's also part of the offerings for the cleansing of a leper. I want you to pay careful attention to the offerings, and I want you to pay careful attention to the timing and where the blood goes. It's an interesting parallel that happened before. Okay? Everybody happy? All right. And in chapter 15 is the red heifer. You guys are very familiar with that portion, hopefully. If you're not, get familiar. Okay? It should. With the purification offering of the red heifer, step by step, and look at the imagery. You're going to see the same thing with chapter 14, and I want you to think about the cross. Okay? 16 is Yom Kippur, again, the high priest service and what he does. All right? So there's things there that we can go and we can peel apart a little bit more, but I want you to kind of get the framework in your head so that we have okay, guys, remember what the high priest's job is today. And then I'll place emphasis on 2 or 3 points, and then we'll obviously come back to Yom Kippur and Leviticus 16 and how it ties in with Hebrews and so on near Yom. Happy? All right. Shall we pray?